tuned into one of these and saw the ladder, and they got a little upset. So I just wanted to let them know, if you're watching, everything's fine. I was just changing a battery.
Yeah, I had my second COVID shot, the Pfizer at the VA.
Oh, good for the VA, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed with the news that there's a bit of an uptick in new cases.
And more than a bit of an uptick, 30% rise this past week in the city. That's a big deal, but that's exactly what's happening in Europe. So we gotta make sure that folks are following protocols while we get folks vaccinated, I think.
Back to being worrying again. Back to worrying again. Oh.
Well, if you stop worrying, that's on you, man. Yeah. I just, I just always take the CDC at its word, and now, and we're definitely in some places in Philadelphia, things, because I live close to Center City, and we're seeing behavior that's definitely going to drive the numbers up for a while.
Hope that news serves as a wake-up call.
Yeah, if anybody, yeah. I think, right. I mean, gosh, my neighbors who have had both of their shots are, I still run into them only on the street and only with their masks on. So gotta.
Okay, so it is 7 o'clock, and we have a couple people on the call who do have other obligations, and we promised that we would get started sharp. So welcome everybody to Philly for Change. I'm Melissa Robbins. Of course, you all know Sam Durso, who has been Sam is one of the original founders. He and Dave Skolnick are the two people who welcomed me about, is it 4 or 5 years ago now?
Yeah,
to Philly for Change. Yeah, an organization that I really like. Of course, we have Beth Finn, who joined us about a year or two ago. But welcome to Philly for Change. Sam's gonna go ahead and get us started and explain to you all the endorsement process, just in case you didn't know.
Yeah, so real quick, welcome everybody. Philly for Change has been around in one form or another since 2004. It got its start as Philly for Dean, believe it or not, Howard Dean, and quickly became Philly for Change in 2004. And we have been meeting on first Wednesdays since then. So for a while. And since 2007, and I'll say this, one of our first endorsements was actually Derek Green. In 2007. Since 2007, we have been doing endorsements. And the way that works in Philly for Change is this. If you show up for 2 meetings prior to the vote, you're considered a member and you're in good standing, and you can cast a vote. Voting typically was done by written ballot at our meeting place, which for the last few years has been, and we hope to return, Tattooed Mom on the 500 block of South Street. But we now will have an online ballot. And Beth, could you explain the online ballot? Beth, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I was taking a drink. Okay, so it'll be a Google form. We will email it out to folks, and you will be able to choose whether you think we should or should not endorse each candidate that we've heard from this cycle. And if a candidate gets 60% yes, then we will endorse them.
Great. And so that's how it will work this year. And I think we can go right on in. Melissa, do you want to introduce our first speaker tonight? Oh, I think you're on.
Hi, everybody. I thought I was talking to you, and here I am now. Our first candidate that I'm going to introduce is a good friend of mine. Her name is Rania Major. She's running for both Municipal Court and the Court of Common Pleas. She is one of those women who's been out there. I've seen her year after year on the campaign trail, not only working on one of the toughest neighborhoods here in Philadelphia, but all over the city assisting people. So I'm very, very happy to welcome Rania Major. Welcome, everybody. Rania, are you there?
Right? Oh,
Yeah, I think you're muted.
Rania, you're muted.
I am. I'm
There
sorry.
you are.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? It's like Verizon. There you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So good evening. Thank you for having me. It's so great to see you guys, in this COVID world that we're living in. So first of all, initially, let me tell you that I'm very excited. I will be running for MC. So I withdrew from CP today. I am second on I just went blank. Am I blank? Oh, that was Sam.
We can still hear you.
You can hear me? It's not,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There it is. So I will be running for municipal court, and I'm very excited to be doing that. I have, as Melissa said, been up in North Philadelphia at one of the hardest hit corners in the city, 5th and Indiana now. I've been up there for 23 years and loving every minute of it, but also being very wary of a lot of things that are going on in our city. Let me tell you, I think a lot of you know about how much I do for the community. I do food banks. I've gotten people across the city involved in an online food bank. One of the members had reached out and asked me to do it. We do them at my house, or at my office, excuse me. It feels like my house because I spend more time there. I have done every single court, as you know. I'm a member of TCRC's board, the Center for Returning Citizens. I am a member of Haven Women's Board, which is the first homeless veteran house for women in the entire city, where every single woman is a minority. I have additionally done countless things that I don't even keep track of because I just do. I run on compassion, experience, and equity. Our courts are really, really in trouble right now, and particularly in Philadelphia, and they're having a rough time in COVID. There is division amongst the races. There's division amongst the divisions of the courts, and it has totally run afoul. We are not ready to open in COVID. I have been leading a group of attorneys and paving the way, both against the courts and against the prisons for not taking care of people properly. I got Isaiah Thomas involved. I got State Rep Danilo Burgos involved, who in turn got Joanna McClinton involved, and Senator Street. I wrote questions for them to pose, specifically Isaiah, to the courts and to the prisons about why they are not ready and why our people are wearing one-ply bed sheets as masks in the prisons. That's why it's going around so badly. The importance of municipal court, as you all know, is criminal, landlord-tenant, and small claims court. More importantly, in criminal. In criminal, I would hear preliminary hearings, and I would hear any municipal court, anything that's just misdemeanors. With respect to those, I believe that right now the law is, well, I know the law is, that you can't determine credibility in a preliminary hearing. We are just supposed to pass on cases if we think the Commonwealth has met their burden of proof. You have somebody who clearly is not credible. Credibility is not permissible right now as a determination, but there are situations where, why should we have people sitting up in prison and or having their families pay for private attorneys when their case could be kicked at the front end if it is that incredibly uncredible. So I'm not adverse to trying to write some law. The issue with that is that it then gets appealed de novo, which means brand new to the common pleas level where another trial would occur. But I think that we need to start making that change. Additionally, what I'd like to see is something that hasn't happened, and COVID and this has taught us. Judges, typically, we come to you and we ask you for your endorsement and they say that everybody disappears. First of all, unless I'm not getting off of my boards, they're too important for me. I may have to come off of TCRC because I know I may be dealing with some people that come back. Although I would think most of them would be CP level, common pleas level. But why can't judges come out into the communities? And this is what I would like to do and I propose. We do a video, and we do a video of judges from the different ranks, probation officers, former incarcerated individuals, police officers, and people, if we can, who have just come out of jail or prison. And we have each one tell their perspective so that it can be recorded. It can be video played in the different schools. It can help our young people to maybe understand the true impact. And if it's really not cool to pick up a gun, or it's really not cool to do some of the things that can potentially lead to lifelong consequences for them. Because as a judge, people think that somehow we would have some additional powers. We have powers over the cases, but we're as equal as everybody else. And I also hope to bridge some of the gaps, not just between the bench and the communities, but also to bridge the gaps within the bench itself. I was shocked to learn of some of the things going on inside of the court right now and the division in our court. If judges cannot be unbiased, fair, equitable, and not prejudge anybody, including their other fellow colleagues in robes, then we're in trouble. I have a history of hiring minorities, LGBTQIA. I don't hire people based upon what their preferences are, what their looks are. I hire people based upon what their qualities are and what their abilities are. And I look at other people that way. Every person has goodness in them. It's an issue about finding it. And it's an issue about reaching out to them and helping them grow in the places where they might be weak, myself included, because none of us are perfect. So I hope that you will help me ascend to the municipal court bench. I don't know if you'd like any other, if you're going to ask questions or not, but you can contact me at majorforjudge.com with the number 4, or you can always reach out any way you want to on Facebook or with Facebook Messenger. And thank you very much for having me. I know I didn't come to any Zoom meetings. I didn't know you were having them. I remember being with you guys last time in 2019. I am sorry that we're not at Tattoo Mom because it's the coolest place to campaign and be. Thank you.
Thank you, Rania. It is quite all right that you didn't know. And yes, we all do miss the Tattoo Mom, and it is a very, very cool place to be. Thank you so much for that presentation. The next person to speak will be Attorney Michael Lambert. Michael, are you on the phone with us? Hello, Michael, are you there? If you're there, if this is your call, I think you may be muted. Hello.
Don't see him. There's one person on the phone, but I think that's Lisa Deeley.
Yeah. It's Sherry Cohen. Sherry Cohen is next to speak after Michael Lambert. Is Sherry with us?
Sherry is not.
Okay. So while we wait for Sherry and Michael to join us, I think it's fair to say if anyone has any announcements to make, I think now would be a good time.
Yeah, I know one of the things we often do during announcements is when people have issues that you're making phone calls about or getting volunteers for. Um, do we have any, I mean, we finally are at a time when, at least at the federal level, some legislation is moving. As anyone participating in any volunteer or phone banking right now?
Who's this man talking?
Well, I want to jump in here right now because I see that, and we can get to you in a hot second, but I see that we do have a candidate that has joined us. He is Brian Neft. He's also running for the Pennsylvania Superior Court. Brian Neft is here with us from Allegheny County. And while we wait for Michael and Shari to join us, who are both running here at the local level in Philadelphia, we welcome Brian Neft to speak, who is a candidate for Superior Court. Welcome to Philly for Change, Brian Neft.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for being so kind enough to invite me to the meeting so that I could speak to the group. I really appreciate that. My name is Brian Neft, and I am from Allegheny County, and I'm running for judge of the Pennsylvania Superior Court. I guess the best thing to do is just sort of give my stump speech, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have afterwards. So I am from a town called Mount Lebanon, which is about 6 miles south of Pittsburgh, and it's the home of our local Congressman Connor Lamb, and I sat on our Mount Lebanon Democratic Committee for many years as we worked hard to get him to Washington and then keep him there. I gave up my seat on the Democratic Committee so that I could take this run for Pennsylvania Superior Court. I am fourth generation Pittsburgher. My great grandfather came over to Pittsburgh from Eastern Europe at the turn of the last century. And he started a trucking company in Pittsburgh's Hill District with nothing more than a pool cart and a blind horse. And he turned that into a thriving regional trucking company that he turned over to my grandfather even before I was born. But not being happy to sit around in retirement, he wanted to actually get back on the trucks with his drivers, meet his customers, get shipments, make deliveries. And his drivers looked at him, they said, Pap, they called him Pap, and he said, you're not a member of the union, you can't do this. And he said, well, then make me a member of the union. And they did. And he lived out his days as a member of the Teamsters Local 249 in Pittsburgh, doing what he loved best, which was actually just, doing the hard work that everybody else was doing. I went to undergraduate at the University of Pennsylvania, and I went to law school at Boston University. And so, my time at Penn was a great time in my life. And, I came to love Philadelphia as much as I love my hometown, Pittsburgh, but just by being there for the 4 years that I was. And I went to law school afterwards. But the reason I went to law school really came up a lot earlier. My mom, when I was in high school, gave up her career as a home economics teacher and decided she was going to become a lawyer. And she went to Duquesne University night school in Pittsburgh, and every day she had our dinners ready and our lunches ready and our breakfast ready. And she would go off to school, and I would get to pick her up in the evenings and see her in the classroom setting and see her in study groups that which she had at our house. And I really got hooked on the law and the give and take and the bantering back and forth on the issues that they were handling. And that's how I got hooked on the law. When I graduated law school and came back to Pittsburgh, I clerked for a judge on the Pennsylvania Superior Court and for 4 years. And while there, I drafted hundreds of decisions for my judge that are the same types of decisions that I would be handling as a judge on the Pennsylvania Superior Court, which include criminal appeals, appeals between private citizens, cases between private citizens, domestic issues, and juvenile issues. And in my private practice for the last 30 years, I've handled cases in all of those types of areas. And I practiced in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and I practiced in front of the Superior Court, and I practiced in front of the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court as well. So I'm intimately familiar with the types of cases and the appellate practice that's necessary to operate in that court. And in addition, I practiced in 30 different counties across the Commonwealth, including in Philadelphia. I understand the diversity of the citizenry of the Commonwealth, but everybody who comes to court, no matter what, is entitled to be equal in the eyes of the court and get their opportunity to be heard in the court. And that's the essential of what a good judge should be doing. But just as important as my career path has been, so are the things that I've done sort of in the community that have been, that are really important to me. I've been a leader in our bar association in Pittsburgh for many years, and I was president of the Allegheny County Bar Association in 2018, 2019. One of the first things I was asked to do was take over a campaign called Attorneys Against Hunger. And Attorneys Against Hunger was a very grassroots campaign to raise money for hunger relief in Allegheny County. And when I took that over, and I was sort of a one-person committee, we were raising about $27,000 a year for hunger relief in Allegheny County. And as a result of my efforts, engaging our bar association, engaging the members, getting them out to the different agencies, we increased that number to about $115,000 a year. And since the inception of that campaign, we've raised over $2 million for hunger relief in Allegheny County. It is so important because no child should ever be hungry and no family should ever be insecure in their food needs. In the Bar Association, I've served on what's called our Gender Bias Subcommittee, and that's a committee of practitioners and judges that field confidential complaints from individuals that believe they've suffered gender bias in our profession. And with their consent, we go to the offending source and we tell them they were wrong. We tell them they need to rectify the situation, and we tell them they need to atone for the situation. And in that respect, we've gone to jurists and practitioners, not just in Allegheny County, but other counties where our practitioners are involved, to speak truth to power, because there's no room for bias or discrimination in the profession of law, in the judiciary, or in society as a whole. And as a result of my efforts in the Bar Association, I should say, you know, as part of the work I've done in the Bar Association, I've championed issues on behalf of women, on behalf of people of color, on behalf of the LGBTQ community. And as a result of my efforts, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court appointed me to what's called the IOLTA Board, and it's their charitable arm that distributes state funding to legal service agencies across the Commonwealth, including community legal services in Philadelphia, that provide legal services to individuals who can't afford it. I'm committed to the concept of access to justice and making sure we can maximize the number of people that get legal services where they need it, particularly in critical life areas such as housing, food needs, and healthcare. You know, I spent 3 years in law school and then a lifetime honing my skills to be able to make cogent arguments in court. Somebody who comes in on their own without that kind of training and experience, they're at a significant disadvantage. They can tell a judge what they want, but they can't necessarily put it into the terms of an argument. And it's so critical that they get that representation. And as I said, I'm committed to the concept of access to justice and expanding the roles of attorneys to make sure that individuals get the services they need. You know, on the criminal side, the public defender does represent criminal defendants where incarceration is at issue. But on the civil side, there's no protection like that. And it's critical because people do have to come to court to have their disputes settled, whether it's voluntary on their part or many times involuntary. And they need to have the resources to be able to navigate the system just like everybody else. The Allegheny County Bar Association rated me highly recommended for the position of Superior Court Judge, and the Pennsylvania Bar Association also recommended me. And in their recommendation to me, they said that his writing is skillful and shows formidable knowledge of trial-related issues, and they lauded my integrity, my calm demeanor, and my work, diligence, and hard work in the community. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I really just appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Brian Neft, again, who's running for Pennsylvania Superior Court?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I know you can't comment on how you would rule in any given case, but it's pretty obvious that voting rights across the country, and especially in Pennsylvania, and especially for people of color, are under attack right now. What do you think a Superior Court judge can do to prevent that?
I'll be honest.
Or prevent people from being disenfranchised.
It's funny because I see my friend Sierra Street in the corner here, and I would say that's probably going to be more in her ballywick as a Commonwealth Court judge than it would be a Superior Court judge, because it's not an issue that's likely to go to the Superior Court. You know, you're right though. Voting rights are critically important, and you need good judges that you know are going to be or will stand up, and most likely in the trial area to make sure that everybody gets the rights that they deserve. I mean, I've done voter protection work on election day to make sure that everybody that wants to vote gets to vote, and I'm very happy, at least in my own corner of the world, that the judges here have understood that and made sure that, you know, everybody does get that opportunity. But you're right, it's a critical issue it's certainly under attack, and we have to, you know, guard against it.
Are there any more questions for Brian? Brian, I have one question for you.
Yes.
Could you explain to us how your work ethic, if you are elected to the Superior Court, will be rooted in anti-racist decisions coming out of that court?
So I think I'd start with the premise that, like I said, everybody who comes to court comes with a blank slate and comes with an equal slate. That, you know, as I describe it, everybody comes to court equally. And the thing that sets us apart in terms of how things are done is we follow the rule of law. And the rule of law is what guides us. And there's really nothing else to guide us in terms of, you know, how we should decide a case. That doesn't mean we don't bring our experiences to bear on how we might view a particular issue. And I will tell you, my experiences have been, you know, understanding issues in the African-American community that have affected us in Allegheny County. You know, I can tell you, you know, for 30 years, I've watched, you know, claims of excessive police force in our area and, you know, struggled to figure out exactly what we need to do. And I know in our bar association, you know, we have attempted to tackle that issue by putting together task force to come up with new laws and new rules that would deal with issues like excessive police force. So I think the best answer I can give you is that the cases that come to the Superior Court are based on the law, but I certainly have that understanding of, you know, why it's critical to give everything that second look to make sure that everybody's rights are being protected.
Yeah, it looks like I got bumped off. I'm still here. But thank you very much, Brian, for answering that. As Dave said before, not only are voting rights under attack, but we consistently see rulings coming from the courts, or both local and appellate level, that are egregious. We're seeing people get 30, 40, 50 years. We're seeing the Innocence Project reveal, you know, evidence that grants people their freedom and they've given most of their lives. So we're seeing some really unjust, you know, decisions come from our courts. And it's concerning when we have candidates that come before us and we put our faith and our trust in them to deliver in the most fair and just manner. And then we see decisions coming out that says otherwise. So obviously this is a time for a lot of us who are very, very concerned. But we thank you, and truly from Philly for Change, we wish you well, because we need good representation for all of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. And if I may just, you know, comment further, I hope you don't mind me taking just a couple more seconds. You know, you bring up a valid point about, you know, the unfairness that exists in the system. And it's an issue that, you know, we as candidates actually can talk about, because it deals with what we call the administration of justice. And there are so many issues out there that need to be addressed. It probably needs a fairly large forum to be able to vet the issues and come up with solutions that exist maybe outside of the courtroom, but possibly, you know, with the local bar associations, with local government officials, and with the courts to try to drive effective solutions.
Indeed, indeed, absolutely. We thank you very much. And if you are
Hello,
elected to
I have one question. My name's Cynthia Lee. I live in Center City, Philadelphia. And my question, I'm a former Pittsburgher. I went to Alderdice. But anyway, that's a long story. But my question is, in Superior Court, are you going to be getting appeals where people are asking, there are a lot of trials out now that like are in public view and the press has gotten to them and the jury probably has been tainted. So my question is, when those cases come up before you for appeal because the judge did not grant the court a change of venue, will you be judging those type of court cases, or that is not the superior court?
Well, it sounds like what you're talking about would be in the criminal context. And
Okay.
if it were if you're talking about a criminal trial, yes, that those appeals would come up to the superior court, except with the exception of capital cases, which go directly to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And if I just may comment as an aside, my mom and dad graduated Taylor Alderdice.
Okay, all right. The Dragons, go Dragons. Okay. All right, great. Okay, well, that's good to know because it seems like a lot of the lawyers, for some reason, sometimes take their cases to the public, to the press. And so the jury really does get tainted in a lot of these cases. So in some cases, I don't see how you can even have a fair trial, even though you may feel the person is guilty 100% because there's a video or because they have, 25 witnesses saying that they saw them do this bad deed. But still, you're supposed to be having a fair trial. And so that's why I asked this question as a judge, how would you feel about this change of venue for these more popular cases if it came before your court?
I mean, it's an interesting issue that you raise. And I think, as I would say, as a sort of a qualifier, that I can't tell you how I would rule on a particular issue because it really is based on the record that comes up from down below. But, I do believe the rules are adequately set forth that put, that allow the trial judge the discretion to either move the case to another county to be heard with a, for example, a Philadelphia jury, or to bring in a jury from another county to consider the case. And it's largely within the discretion of, that judge to do that. And it brings up a different issue in a sense, because, I don't want, everybody, especially in the criminal realm, is entitled to, counsel to be able to argue their case as zealously as possible. It doesn't always happen that way. And that's an unfairness issue that really needs to be addressed to make sure that all of those issues are being presented adequately.
Okay.
Thank you.
That we're at our time. Did that adequately answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good stuff. And we are at our time. We'd like to thank Brian. Thank you very much. It looks like Attorney Michael Lambert has jumped on the line and has joined us. Michael, welcome to Philly for Change. You are running for the Municipal Court and the Court of Common Pleas, is that correct?
No, fortunately, I'm running for Municipal Court only. I am no longer petitioning for Court of Common Pleas. And good afternoon, by the way, or good evening.
Well, hello. Welcome to Philly for Change. I think this may be your first time coming. And of course, we welcome you. As Rania said earlier, prior to COVID, we were meeting at 5th and South at the Tattooed Mom. It's probably one of the most colorful venues in the city, but here we are. We're very unorthodox, very relaxed, and very laid back. So we welcome you to Philly for Change, Michael Lambert. Tell us all about yourself and your platform while you're running and why you want our vote.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to first thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak. If I go too far, please just give me a little wave and I'll take the clue, because sometimes I get a little carried away. Let me first start by telling you, I'm the people's lawyer. That's what everybody in the community know me as. And I'm asking for your endorsement so I can become the people's judge for municipal court. Let me tell you briefly about myself. I was born in Jamaica in 1974, moved to Philadelphia in 1986. And throughout that time, we had some financial difficulties where, we literally would I worked for about $3 a week, taking out the trash in my building. I started working at Cal's barbershop while I was in middle school. And then even in high school, sweeping up the floors, shampooing hair. And all of that money would go to my family because we're from a single family household. At one point I'd asked my mother for the money back to play video games, and she said, "You're living in it, son." So, I learned from a young age that, we given an opportunity, you work for it, you do everything you can to make yourself better, and you try to help other people. Along the way, a lot of people helped me. Those gentlemen in that barbershop, they were my father. They raised me. From there, I went to Temple Law undergraduate and Temple Law School. But when I was in Temple undergrad, I worked 60 hours a week at night as a security guard, respector guard, and I would take about 25 or 26 credit each semester just to make sure I could get done as quickly as possible. I even asked my dean to allow me permission to work as a first-year law student. I graduated in 2001. And of all those experiences, I decided the best place for me was to work in the public defender's office. All those people that helped me to get to be an attorney, I have to return the favor back. These were janitors, these were barbers, these were people that helped me along the way. And I felt like it was my responsibility and duty to help folks that needed it, that could not afford a lawyer. After that time, I worked for a couple of the law firms, see if I could make a couple of dollars here or there. And then I still had that burning desire in my heart to help. And what I decided to do was to open my own law firm on Rising Sun Avenue in Lawncrest near Albany, near Adams Avenue. And I chose that location because I wanted to be where people could walk through the door and ask me questions for free. They could get representation for a lower price. My paralegal always says if I'd stop doing so many pro bonos and doing my work at a reduced rate, I'd be rich and she could get a raise. But I always remind her, listen, we're not here for that. We're given an opportunity, we're gonna work, and she's always standing by me. And what I've done is a lot of immigration, a lot of criminal defense. I've worked for people, even people coming in my office, the husband gives me a couple dollars and I end up giving the wife back $100 because there's family issues where he's not providing money for the household. This experience of my life of 46 years on this earth has given me the opportunity to ask for your endorsement to become the people's judge. I'm gonna take that experience with me. I'm gonna remember that these are people that I'm looking at. These are not hardened criminals in this court of common pleas. These are people that are facing landlord-tenant matters. These are people that are in small claims court. These are people that want to have their day in court. I remember as a child, when I was taking out the trash for $3 a week, the landlord would bang on the door because we couldn't pay the rent. We could not pay the rent. And I'm not the only person that's been through that. So I took that with me as a lawyer. So when I represented the landlords, I would make sure that I say, listen, 9 out of 10 times you're not going to get any money. Why go for a money judgment? Let's work out a deal. You want the tenant out, we'll get them out. And let's not oppose a petition to vacate so that they can get another apartment in the future. These are those little kids that are sitting there in landlord tenant with their parents. I'm that little kid. And that kid deserves a right and an opportunity to have somewhere to live. And the best thing I can do as a judge is to put myself in the position of those children, put myself in the position as that tenant, as well as even the landlord. I have to balance, I have to be fair, and I have to be just. But all those experiences I have, I'm going to take them with me. And in closing, I also want to say, thank God that I'm here, but God has given me the opportunity to pick the #1 ballot position for municipal court. I picked actually number 3, and somehow, some way, God made it so I'm #1. And I have several endorsements, including the Working Families, AFL-CIO. I could go on and on and on about all the endorsements that I've received, but I asked for your endorsement. That's why I'm here. And I ask you to allow me to transition from the people's lawyer to be the people's judge. Let me take care of the people. Let me do my job. When I go to heaven and God asks me, what did I do? I want to be able to say that I did well, and I did well for my fellow human beings, despite their race, despite their national origin, despite their sexuality, despite their height, despite their hair or lack thereof. Everybody deserves a fair day in court, And sometimes it just takes 5 extra minutes, 5 minutes to just listen and figure out what this person needs and try to find the best solution. If you don't stop me, I'm going to keep going. So I see your eyes. I guess I'm done at this point.
Oh, no, no, you can keep on going. Go right ahead.
Really? Don't say that now. You might bite off. It might be more than you asked for. Listen,
Right
at the end of the day, folks, I want to put myself in a position where I can help everybody. I want to make a difference. I've made a difference as a lawyer for 20 years. I've done a countless amount of criminal defenses, immigration. There's so many families that through God, I'm able to save from being deported, where they're here working a good job. They're taking care of their families here and abroad. We're making the world a better place, one person at a time. And if I have done that as a lawyer for 20 years, I know in my heart that if I'm given the opportunity, I will do the same as a judge. Allow me to bring that experience to the bench so I could do well for each person that comes in front of me, and I can make the world a better place. I thank you so much for your time and your patience.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. I like that title, the people's attorney, the people's judge, because that's what it comes down to, the people. Does anyone have any questions for Attorney Michael Lambert? Well, I have a question, Michael. A lot of people don't know the difference between MC court and CCP court. So could you briefly give us a description? Say, for example, someone is suing their landlord or someone's suing their tenant, or it's just a suit of where someone owes someone X amount of dollars. What is the maximum amount of dollars that one can request through a lawsuit that would go to your
Absolutely, thank you.
sort of common maximum amount?
Okay, I'm sorry, I just want, are you finished, ma'am?
Yes, what's the max amount of monies that someone can sue another person for that would end up in the court before you?
Okay, so in small claims court, if I'm honored to be in small claims court, my recollection is about 12,000 or 12,005. I think it's exactly 12,000. Anything below $12,000, you would go to municipal court. That's small claims. Anything above that, you'd have to go to the Court of Common Pleas. With regards to criminal cases, a lot of the preliminary hearings are conducted by municipal court judges, meaning that there's it's not an actual trial for folks, but it's to see whether there's enough evidence to send all the charges to trial. And that's still a very important factor, because at the end of the day, as a municipal court judge, I'll be able to determine from the facts or that's presented to me as to whether each and any charge should be forwarded up to the Court of Common Pleas. Additionally, landlord-tenant matters, all landlord-tenant matters start in municipal court. They can be appealed if either side don't like it to a higher court, to the Court of Common Pleas and the like. But, municipal court, as I said, is for the people. It's for ordinary, everyday people, working class people, people that have landlord-tenant issues, people that may have a DUI, people that, and also municipal court handles misdemeanor cases. Once there's a felony involved, like a gun or something to that effect, a legal gun, then that goes up to the Court of Common Pleas. So I'm dealing with the working folks that go to work as a janitor, work as a CNA in a hospital. These are average, everyday folks. And that's why I want to be the people's judge, because I will be able to properly judge the people based on my experiences, based on my heart, based on my training, and that's generally it. Landlord, tenant, small claims, preliminary hearings. Generally, that's just about it. I mean, there's probably some more, but right off the top of my head, that's generally what municipal court deals with. Court of Common Pleas, for example, if you have a car accident where someone is injured and it's up to $50,000 or above $50,000, that goes to Court of Common Pleas. Under $50,000, they have to be arbitrated first, but that's still a completely different court from what I'll be doing. And I'm going to stop now before I keep going.
All right. Well, No, thank you very much for explaining that, because we can't assume that people who are joining are standing in the difference of the courts and for the court. So thank you for that thorough explanation. Does anyone else have questions for Attorney Michael Lambert?
Does the municipal court, hello, Mr. Lambert. My name is Cindy Lee. I live in Center City. And thank you for informing us about your role. Now, my question is, does the municipal court handle problems with traffic? Let's say if you're injured with a pothole, if you're injured, you know, there are bike lanes that they have built now. Do you handle those type of things?
Let me just ask you, did you say I understand the generally small claims accidents, but you said something I didn't quite hear you. Did you say
Potholes, bicycle lanes?
okay?
They have bicycle lanes, and let's say if a biker is injured or there's a problem with it, do you handle that in municipal court?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Lee, for the opportunity to answer your question. It still goes back to the plaintiff's lawyer or the person that's filing the lawsuit and the actual client. So if someone injures themselves in a pothole and the lawyer who represents that injured person decide that this matter is not worth above $12,500 or $12,000, and they want to make sure that they have a quick turnaround, then they can file in small claims court. So really, the municipal court, the small claims court, and that's just a subdivision of municipal court, but municipal court will handle those matters that are under $12,500. So it all depends on the amount of damages that person has and whether the attorney and the client or plaintiff believes that their case is worth less than $12,500. And if it is, they'll file that case and they'll come in front of me. If it's above $12,000, then or $12,500, then they will actually file in court of common pleas, and I will not see that at all.
I wanted to ask Mr. Lambert, Melissa, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Thank
Of course.
you.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Lambert, you must have had yourself an experience in municipal court. And I wondered if you can tell us a little bit about that experience. Why did you decide to run? You know, as a people's lawyer, that's where people go, you know, ordinary people. And I wonder what your experience has been, whether you could tell us a little bit.
Well, I started out in 2001 when I finished Temple Law School. And thank you so much. Is it Ms. Larson?
Yes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to answer your question. I started out in criminal defense when I left the public defense, when I started in the public defender's office and left law school in 2001. Most of the cases I did initially were in municipal court doing preliminary hearings. Now, for those of us that are not familiar with preliminary hearings, I alluded to it earlier, but it generally it's a criminal case and it's like a mini trial, but it's not the end of the trial where the person is guilty or innocent. It's actually just determining of initial case to determine prima facie if there's enough evidence that's presented in front of you to send that matter up to the Court of Common Pleas for trial. The other experiences that I had, once I finished working as a public defender and I worked in different law firms, I didn't really do a lot of small claims matter. I didn't do that. That's why when I left the public defender's office and opened my own, I went to different offices, I had that burning desire to still help people because people helped me. And that's why I opened my own office. And that's when I started in 2008 to help to get small claims, people walking through my door, people working as janitors, people working as just ordinary folks that did not or could not afford an attorney of over 10 years worth of service or experience. And the joy, the pure joy that I got personally, selfishly, from helping people in municipal court was phenomenal. Like, if I'm representing the tenant and I'm able to not to have the tenant stay another 1 or 2 extra months, getting the landlord to not charge them the back rent, getting them to be in a position where they can get another apartment without that judgment, that stain on their record, that you're changing somebody's life. That's landlord tenant. For small claims. I had a client that they were both the plaintiff and the defendant were both from Haiti. And this young lady, she cried all the way through. She has 3 boys. Her husband, or her boyfriend didn't speak good English. And the other Haitians took advantage of her, and her roof was leaking. And we sued them, and we won that case. And she got her $8,000 that allowed her to fix her roof, fix the bathroom that they did. She worked hard for that money, very hard. And the husband, I don't recall what his situation was. I don't know if it was disabled or something to the effect, but this was her money. And the joy that I got out of her getting that money was fantastic. In fact, the other side came to me and tried to retain me as their lawyer after, unfortunately, we won our case. Now, those are experiences that I have where, if I could be, or if God allows me to be a judge and I could make that decision to determine who is right and who is wrong in this matter, and work through that process. And if it's that young lady that has her 3 boys, and now they're all grown up and they're coming back hugging me, I'm giving them like $50 when they're getting a high scores on their report card. When I die, these are the things hopefully God remembers, and forget about the other stuff that I may or may not have done. As, I'm Jamaican, as Shaggy said, it wasn't me. So right now, I want the opportunity, and I'm asking the opportunity to be that municipal court judge, so I can be fair, so I could take those experiences with me and make good decisions.
Thank you.
I could keep going, but I'm going to stop.
Yes, well, we thank you, Attorney Michael Lambert, and like all of the candidates coming before us, we wish you well, and it's good to know that there are attorneys out there like yourself, like Rania, like Brian, all of these people that come here before us and tell us stories of how you fight for everyday people. Those are the things that we want to hear, and of course, we wish you the very best of luck, and thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to stop by and join us here at Philly for Change.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Thank you, everybody that's on this call, and I appreciate the opportunity. And God bless all of you. Thank you so much, and be safe, everyone.
Thank you.
And don't forget to drop your information there in the chat. So if anyone wants to contact your campaign,
I will certainly do that. And don't forget, #1 ballot position. And God has blessed us, and we hope to be on that bench and do good things. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. Sam, so we're gonna, right now, I'm gonna pass it over to Sam. We're going to have our next speaker that's going to be here in 9 minutes. So this is the perfect time if any of you have any announcements. And I know what's important right now before we are joined by District Attorney Larry Krasner, who will be coming on the line at 8 p.m. But I think it's important, I know that Beth and Sam would agree with me, to introduce those elected officials who are here joining us tonight. Yeah. So I see we have Commissioner Deeley with us. Hello, Commissioner Deeley.
I'm sure.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Hi, Lisa.
Almost time. Hopefully soon we'll be at Tattoo Mom, but I think it's great that everybody's still taking the time to be together on this Zoom. Just points of business. May 3rd, we want to make sure everybody's registered to vote by May 3rd. So if you have anybody in your household that is going to be 18 on or before May 3rd, you want to get them registered to vote. If there's any change to your voter registration, you want to make that happen. And May 11th is the last day to apply for a mail-in ballot. So if you want to vote by mail, that's your deadline. You can go to phillyvotes.com. or you can vote in person, and hopefully it'll be a nice weather day. So anything, we could help you with, if anybody needs any supplies, if they're doing any voter registrations, or if they need any mail-in ballot applications, I'm here every month, but I'm always available to anybody that needs any help, or if you want me to come out to another meeting, happy to do that too. Thanks for having me always.
Thanks, Lisa.
It's always a pleasure.
Are there going to be any?
Go ahead, Sam.
Lisa, are there going to be any any extra offices for dropping ballots off or anything like that?
So so far for this election, there'll be one confirmed satellite office location in City Hall, and we are putting a plan together for drop boxes and ballot collection, which we will be announcing, well before the ballots go out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So much. We really appreciate Commissioner Deeley. Sam, how long has she been joining us? I don't think she's missed the meeting, has she?
No, Lisa's always here.
I think I try to be to every meeting since 2015. The first time I ran, Philly for Change took a chance on me and endorsed me. I made a commitment then that I wasn't going to be one of those elected officials that you only see around election time, especially for a group like Philly for Change that really, you're the real deal. So, and I enjoy the meeting. So, and I love going to Tattoo Mom, admittedly. So it works for everybody.
Yeah.
Lisa, do you guys know yet when the mail-in ballots might be sent out?
So, Act 77 allows for the mail-in ballot to go out 50 days ahead of the election day if the ballot is finalized. And it's a judicial election, and there are a lot of court challenges that are still ongoing. So hopefully once they get all wrapped up, we'll have a better sense. But we have to wait until we can finalize that ballot.
Lisa, I have a question. I'm just curious. I noticed some of the drop boxes from the last election are still there, like the one outside Eastern State Penitentiary. So are those going to be permanent?
Ideally, we would like to have them in permanent locations. That's what we've noticed is a best practice throughout the country in places where they have them, so that people are familiar and they get used to having them there. So it is our hope that they will remain in the positions that they're in. And we would also love the opportunity to add some more throughout the city. I did notice I did some investigating of my own this weekend, and I noticed that some of them have been graffitied, and there's some they need to be some TLC on them before election day. So we're getting to that right now with our friends at Anti-Graffiti and Clip.
Is there any legal challenge to those drop boxes that's currently in court?
Not today.
But every other day.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's one thing that's worried me. I mean, all these movements in state legislatures by Republicans trying to limit people's ability to vote, voter ID things. I believe there's some stuff like that going on in the Pennsylvania legislature.
Oh, there's all kinds of throughout the country. There's a whole kinds of actions going on in state legislatures throughout the country to really limit people's opportunity to vote. It's just something that we have to stay vigilant on, and especially groups like Philly for Change. But for us in the commissioner's office, we are charged with administering the election based on the laws that we have right now. That is not saying that we won't be thrown a curveball, but we are, proceeding with the law as it is currently.
I have a question. I was wondering, I saw there was a story in the Philadelphia Inquirer a couple of weeks ago that said that you supported counting votes before Election Day as part of pre-canvassing. And I was wondering if that story was accurate or if you just support like preparing ballots before election day.
You know, the way the code is written and the language with the pre-canvas and all that, what I support is being able to prepare those, open those envelopes, you know, and get them ready so that they can be tabulated on election day.
But not count them?
They won't physically be counted until election day.
Okay, so you don't want to see them going through scanners before election.
Well,
day.
they can go, you know, whatever we can get to help us to get through those ballots in a more common sense approach. If they went through the scanner, they go through the scanner in other states throughout the country. They're not actually counted. They're not actually part of the count until election day.
Right. Well, they go through the scanners in 16 states out of 50, but
right,
there is a bunch of them. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Did anyone else have any questions?
My name is Cindy Lee, and I live in Center City. I just have a quick question. I mean, what happened with that vaccine? It was just a mess. I mean, the whole thing was just a mess. I'm not even going to go through everything that's gone. Luckily, President Biden's in there. He's trying to get it right now. Is there going to be an investigation to find out exactly what happened so that if this ever happens again, that the public doesn't have to go through this type of frustration? I mean, there were things like when they opened up the vaccines at Rite Aid and CVS, they were allowing people from other states to come in and book before the people in Philadelphia could get to these places. I mean, just unheard of stuff. So is there going to be an investigation to see what went wrong with that vaccine? Hello?
Yeah,
Cindy, I
I
think
mean,
it's fair to say that's a question that you should hold for the district attorney more so than our commissioner.
Okay.
But
Does
actually,
that make sense?
speaking of our district attorney, Melissa, I think I saw that he has joined us.
Yes, and so Cindy, again, for your question that you have about any investigation into any criminal activity, we have just been joined by our incumbent, Larry Krasner, who's our current district attorney, and we know that he's on a very strict time limit. So without further ado, Larry's going to be with us from 8 p.m. to 8:30. Very hard. So whatever I have for our district attorney,
Melissa, good evening. How are you?
Yeah.
Great to see you. I'm sorry, a little bit of that broke up, but I think what I heard is that you were kind enough to introduce me to say I'll be here 8 to 8:30. And I appreciate your accommodating my wacky schedule. It is a little wacky these days. And I'm gonna assume that what I'm being asked to do is do a short presentation and then answer all questions. Is that basically where we are? Okay, and you can all hear me. Thank goodness. All right, well, thank you all so much. I have to tell you, I truly miss doing this in person. Some of these political events, I don't miss doing in person at all, but there is no better place than the, how shall I put it? The third floor, the cinematic third floor of Tattooed Moms for a good political throwdown in the sweat and the beer. There's no better spot. And actually, I remember being there where there was a sort of epic confrontation with a different candidate. I will leave the candidate nameless, but there was a bit of throwdown. You know, there's a lot of vitality in Philly for Change and a lot of vitality in that space. So I will indeed miss it. So let me cut to the chase. I'll try to give you a really quick summary of some of the things that we have accomplished. And then I'll be happy to answer all the questions I can or should answer. We made certain promises. We kept those promises or tried. And in some ways, our progress is more than we ever expected. In some ways, it is less, and we've been a bit frustrated. But let me cut straight to the chase. We said we were going to try to do something about two main things. We were going to try to do something about reform in ways that would also allow us to focus on the most serious violent crimes that tend to tear apart society. Because obviously one of the most important goals of any prosecutor is to avoid the next victimization. It's to have fewer victims as you move forward. And so at the enforcement end, let me just say something very briefly, because there's a lot of hype out there. But the fact is that our rate of conviction for shootings and gun homicides in the first quarter of 2020, right before the court shut down, was almost 85%, which is an extremely high rate and one of the very highest quarterly rates over the last 5 years. Now, I know that might not be what my opponent wants to say, but I would bear in mind that the people who support my opponent, Mr. Vega, also supported Donald J. Trump twice. The people who support my opponent have gone out of their way to try to get Republicans to register as Democrats, which does invite the interesting question whether or not my opponent is a fake Democrat. And I would further point out that the PAC that has been piling up money for my opponent got most of its money from a man named Tim Mellon. Mr. Mellon gave $25 million to Donald J. Trump, money that he got the old-fashioned way, multi-generational wealth going back to the robber baron era in the Mellon family, and has spent most of his time either hurling terrible racial comments or trying to bust unions. So let me just say that if you find that there's some possibility that their information on what's happening with enforcement is not credible, then you would not be just making it up, because the truth is there's a basis for feeling that way. If we look at the reform end of it, we said we were going to try to do something about mass incarceration. What are the numbers? So the numbers are that if you compare what was going on in our office after we got settled in with what was going on in the prior administration, the number of years of future incarceration being generated by the Philadelphia courts were cut in half. They were not cut in half in terms of the most serious offenses. They were cut in half as a consequence of looking at a lot of non-serious offenses, where in the 1970s, people wouldn't have been in jail at all, and doing some things that made a lot of sense. I did not think we were going to be able to cut it in half in 3 years, but we did. It is a tribute to some good effort on our part, but it's also a tribute to how really bad it was in Philly, which is the most incarcerated, the 10th largest city. More work to do, but we did some work. If you look at mass supervision, which is the great feeder for mass incarceration, because an awful lot of people go back to jail after they're out on probation or parole simply because they have a positive test for marijuana in their urine, or because they miss an appointment with their probation officer, etc. We have reduced the future years of excessive supervision on probation and parole by 2/3. Okay. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because the first 3 years are actually helpful and protective and tend to push people away from future criminal activity. But when you get past that, on average, what the science says is it's not just ineffective. It is actually harmful. It actually tends to make people fail. I could get into the how and why, but we can get to that on questions if anybody has it. We said we were going to try to do something about immigrants. We set up a first ever immigrant protection unit, which protects immigrant victims, undocumented witnesses, who, by the way, may be witnesses for us to help other undocumented people, or maybe witnesses for us to help U.S. citizens. And we also are doing something to make sure that there's equal treatment for undocumented people in light of their immigration circumstances. I said equal, not necessarily identical, because they are in a different situation. And we have to take that into account. We also broke a 10-year contract that had existed in which the city was shoveling information as fast as possible to the Trump administration so they could do what they love to do, which is throw out victims of crime and deport witnesses and deport defendants, no matter how serious or non-serious the offense was. We broke that contract after a decade because the mayor joined with me to give us the 2/3 vote that was necessary to break that contract. We set up a first ever worker protection unit that exists primarily for the purpose of bringing criminal cases against employers who commit crimes against their employees. It's never happened before in Philly. It's long overdue. We actually did it, and it has its first significant indictment, which is against a contractor who basically ripped off a whole bunch of plumbers, took their money that was owed for their benefits and their dues and so on, stole it, $110,000, and was then just going to declare bankruptcy and walk away, which is what rich people get to do in our criminal justice system, while poor people who steal food go to jail. So we remedied that situation. We brought the first ever indictment. We are going to be bringing in a grant-funded second attorney to work with us because the work is getting some attention, and we're very excited about continuing to do that work. We held police accountable in unprecedented ways. There's really no dispute about that. Happy to answer more questions on it. And we have exonerated 18 people on 19 cases over the space of 3 years, something that basically didn't happen in Philly before that. We certainly have had some frustrations. Our effort, we said we were going to push against cash bail, and we did. We are doing our best, but it is much more frustrating, and I'm happy to talk about the details of that. We said we were going to try to reduce the roles of people on probation and parole. We tried very hard. That also became more frustrating. Yes, it is declining, but it should have declined much more quickly and much earlier. And if that had happened, we'd all be in a better position in terms of being able to focus on people who do present a danger to the public. So those are a few of the things we've done. Obviously, we face an enormous challenge with the national phenomenon of major cities having this odd combination of slight reductions in crime, slight reductions in violent crime. And that's a category that includes shootings and gun homicides, but big spikes in gun homicides and in shootings in Philadelphia and elsewhere. And I'm happy to talk about that and some of the innovative things that we've been able to do in collaboration with our police commissioner and some of the other ideas that we have moving forward about a much more serious level of funding for prevention, and also some specifics that can be done on the enforcement end that we believe would be helpful. And thanks again for having me here. I wish there was more sweat and beer.
I'm not sure if Melissa was having network problems, but are you open to taking questions?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are. Yes.
I apologize. I had to come off of my cell phone and jump on my laptop, having internet issues. But Beth said it, questions. We had a young lady that actually asked a question earlier to Commissioner Deeley that we felt was more appropriate for you. So of course, the floor is open for questions that you all have for District Attorney Krasner.
Hello, this is Cindy Lee, and District Attorney. Good evening. My name is Cindy Lee again, and I live in Center City. Several questions. One is, are you doing any type of investigation to see what went wrong with the vaccine so that it never happens again? I shared with the group already, things were happening like when CVS and Rite Aid did open up, people from other states were able to come in. They were under 75 and book vaccine injections, along with many, many other things. Black people got a stigma saying that they don't want vaccines. And I am Black, and I know people are Black, and we all wanted vaccines, but they weren't offered to us, not unless we were in that A or B category. So my first question is, are you doing any investigation to find out what went wrong so this never, ever happens again if there's ever another problem like this? And two is, what social groups are you pairing with for the youth to try to prevent these people from becoming criminals? Or once they do go into a criminal institution, what type of reforms are there for these young kids so when they come out, they don't do crime again?
Okay, Cindy Lee, thank you for the question. Let me answer what I can, and I'll explain what I cannot answer. So there have been a number of requests from the community for investigations relating to how there has been the handling of vaccines during the pandemic. A lot of those requests came from a general sense of outrage over the, how shall I put it, youngsters who got the contract the first time around and seemed to be taking all kinds of liberties, while a much, much more qualified group of Black doctors led by Dr. Ayla Stanford were effectively cut out of it, and nevertheless went on a volunteer basis to do some fairly remarkable things. You are also raising another issue having to do with CVS getting the vaccine and people from other states coming in. And I think, as you also put it, many other things. So, you know, criminal prosecutors historically haven't really faced this because we haven't had a whole bunch of pandemics. And so the situation has not arisen previously. And I can tell you this, I can tell you that we are in close communication with not only other state, but also other federal prosecutorial entities that have some way of getting at this either civilly or criminally. And there are a variety of different ways to try to get at it. Although the criminal laws are not particularly written for this kind of thing, there are a variety of ways to try to get at it. Was there some kind of fraud in your efforts to seek a contract with the city? Was there some kind of abuse of federal monies that's inconsistent with the regulations? Has there been an actual theft? You know, did you take some of this vaccine for yourself and your friends because you just thought you could? You know, all of these things and a few others are on the table. I cannot answer your question about whether or not we have an active investigation. We generally do not answer those questions because it makes it harder, if you have one, to complete it. And if you start saying, no, we don't have an investigation, then that answer will mean that unless you're giving it other times, they know you have an investigation. So for the sake of the integrity of investigations, we generally do not do it. And also, if there's a grand jury involved, it's against the law for us to talk about what is happening due to certain laws around grand jury secrecy. But I will tell you this, I think a lot of us found it very troubling, the way that contract went to some young people who seemed remarkably unqualified. We found it even more disturbing when we heard certain reports about what liberties were being taken during that process. I can tell you that I have had more than one conversation with Dr. Stanford, and we have done some social media to support the Black Doctors Consortium because we believe that they are highly qualified. We do not like what happened there, and that we remain in close contact with our federal and state prosecutorial partners, some of whom may have powers that are different than ours to go after certain things that are happening. And we think it's important that we remain in close consultation with them. That much I can say. I share your concerns. As for the issue of youth prevention and things along those lines, we are blessed actually in Philadelphia to have a first assistant. I have two first assistants, but the one I'm talking about now is Robert Listenby. Mr. Listenby has had a very interesting career, but he was, among other things, the chief public defender in Philadelphia for all juvenile cases. And he became so well known nationally that he became Barack Obama's chief of juvenile justice in Barack Obama's entire second term. That is what he did. He ran juvenile justice for the United States of America for, you know, a very remarkable and very impressive president of the United States. Somehow, after 2 no's, I got him to say yes to working with me as a first assistant. And I pretty much said, here's the steering wheel for juvenile justice. You are way smarter than me at this and know more about it. Go. And he went. And so, for example, when we had one scandal after another about the juvenile placements at some of these older institutions, effectively juvenile jails, or in some cases, prettied up juvenile jails that look like a Harry Potter set, but in truth, this was no Harry Potter movie. And what was going on is there was physical abuse, there was poor education and lousy educational results later. There was a lot of trauma related to separation from community and family. It turns out to be very harmful at a price tag, and I'm not making this up, that was over $200,000 a year per kid, right? We have done a lot to change that. When we first came in, there were over 600 kids who were being placed far away from home in these types of facilities. That number is down to over 100. That's an 80% reduction. But simultaneously with that, we have expanded a lot of the programming available within the juvenile justice unit. We have made sure that nearly all, not every single one, but nearly all people who are arrested for crimes that were committed when they were juveniles have their cases resolved in the juvenile system. It's about 99.5%, because we are believers in a juvenile system that focuses on the idea of rehabilitation as opposed to what we focus upon in the adult system, which is punishment. Thank you, Judge Street. Bob Listenby is the truth. I completely agree with you. So, those are some of the things that we have been doing during the pandemic. It has been an awful time to try to deal with programming for juveniles, but we've done as much as we possibly can. And I will tell you that I believe that there is some good news coming, not just for juveniles who are in the system, but for juveniles who are out of the system and young adults who are out of the system. The good news coming from the city is, at least as of some recent press conferences, they're looking forward to being able to open rec centers, being able to open swimming pools, having classrooms, high school classrooms that will be open, returning to certain summer camps, job programs, organized sports. In my entire life, and I'm about to turn 60, in my entire life, I have never seen a time when organized sports, both in and out of school, were shut down, when after-school programs, arts programs were shut down. We have lost so much in this pandemic in terms of just basic fabric of society. Pardon me, my assistant has arrived, but we have lost so much in terms of just the basic fabric of society that has been preventative in terms of juveniles and violence. And I'm very happy to tell you that the city is talking about trying to reopen those things as quickly as medical circumstances allow. So that is a part of it. But let's understand also that Black clergy, in order to address the issues around gun violence, which is largely an issue of juveniles and young adults, Black clergy has recommended the same thing as a community group has recommended, and as some members of council have also raised an idea that I have trumpeted on their behalf. They came up with it, but they're right, which is that there needs to be a very, very serious run at funding prevention. And what that looks like is $100 million being invested in community-based organizations, the ones that work, some other ones that never got it before that can work. This is not just about burning money. This is about investing money where it needs to be invested. That has happened very successfully with the GRID program in Los Angeles for a long time. It also happened in a more limited time frame with certain neighborhoods in Chicago, where they came up with $70 million and they experienced a 30% reduction in gun violence. There were certainly other programs as well, right? But over 2 years before the pandemic, that happened. That is the biggest part. The biggest part here is prevention in a city that has really never done prevention the way it should have, and understandably so, in that it is a poor city. But the biggest part is prevention. And then there are certain things that have to be done in terms of enforcement as well. But your question, I believe, goes to how do we take young people, juveniles in particular, and how do we route them away from crime? How do we reduce the number of future victims? How do we make that a goal? And I think that my answer goes to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, I think you're muted there.
Sam has a question.
Yeah. Hey, Larry. Why don't you just keep talking about those innovative things that you're going to do on gun violence? I'm one of those lefties who stays in contact with a lot of folks in the gun violence reduction community, and I'd like to have some red meat to throw them from our conversation.
Sure. So, there has actually been I like our police commissioner. There has been a good collaboration with our police commissioner in many ways since she got here. There has been no collaboration with the leadership of the FOP, but I'm so sorry, I'm not a Proud Boy. So anyway, getting back to the police commissioner, For example, early on, I suggested to her that we copy something that was done in Chicago, which was the placement of prosecutors. I was talking about police districts, but the police department corrected that in light of how policing is structured in Philly. And instead, it was to place them with some regularity at the divisions where the detectives are located, because detectives are the primary investigators. That has been good. It has been good in terms of improving the quality of information we get when we try to argue for bail or we're evaluating a case. But it's also been good in that there are these relationships developing where it's easier for some of the detectives to work their way through the warrant process, to get questions answered quickly, to make decisions about can they do a car search right away or do they need to wait for a warrant, things like that. I believe that has been positive and constructive. And it's also allowed us to open our first ever intelligence unit within the DA's office, a unit that is fed in many ways by the ADAs that we assign around the city, who are able to gather this intelligence, increase a relationship of trust. And then we also have more data sharing because police are doing data in Philly better than they ever have. So that's one of the programs. Another one, without getting into all the details, but there is what they call a gun violence initiative in Philadelphia. The city favors it. The police department favors it. I have favored it, although it's complicated because we favored it on certain conditions, including the providing of a whole lot of services and not just an enforcement end to it. There was a pilot in South Philly some time ago. Every police officer associated with it told me the same thing as we were looking at this over 2 years ago, which is that it was a potentially successful program where there was no real emphasis on the services. It was all about enforcement the first time, and it needed to be balanced with more services. So that was basically my condition from the beginning was, yes, we're willing to do this. We're willing to work with it, but we need to have the real services. That question needs to be answered, but I can tell you this, we continue to participate in that process. We have some help among some of our elected officials who agree with us that both are important, and we will see that through. The third initiative, which I think is really important, is, and this was the commissioner's idea, not mine, but I think she's absolutely right, is that we take some of the most experienced prosecutors and most experienced police people, and they take essentially all of the new gun violence cases in a particular week, and they examine them. They look through all the discovery, they examine them, and then they meet. Usually they meet every single Wednesday. And what they're doing is they're looking for flaws. It's quality control. They're looking to see whether there's a problem with the stop. They're looking to see whether DNA was done on the gun, but was not done on the suspect. And it should be done on the suspect right away because it takes a long time to get results back. They're looking to see whether there could have been, should have been a search of social media that might have enhanced the case that's a little weak because you did find the gun, you did have a defendant, but the gun is in the trunk and the defendant is driving the car and there's two other people in the car. So you still haven't proved he necessarily knew that gun was there or needed to control it, right? I'm just giving you a few examples of the types of quality control that we deal with. And, I realize that my office can do better and needs to do better. And I appreciate that the police department also realizes that they can do better and that we can do better together. So that has, in my opinion, been a very, very useful initiative. I'm glad that the commissioner raised it. I'm glad we're working with them. And then finally, there's just a lot of data sharing going on. There's more and more trust going on between the police department and a lot of its excellent civilian data specialists and our office, which has a data lab that didn't used to exist. We have a criminologist that didn't used to exist. And we have a grant funded data lab that has almost 15 people now. We're able to do some of the more important and sophisticated data among DA's offices in the United States. And it's certainly the most transparent and outward facing data in the United States, thanks to the kindness of various different foundations that are funding it. So I would say those are four of the initiatives that are going on. And obviously we're looking for more. We continue to do it. I keep banging the drum of forensics. And I know that we have support with some of our elected officials, but we need support that actually turns into funding for forensics, which in my opinion, all by itself, and it's not just my opinion, it's also the opinion of a high-level person in the police department with a ton of experience. In my opinion, that alone could result in a 10% reduction in homicides in Philadelphia. It's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money in a city that has an enormous budget and has an enormous budget for policing. I am asking for a little bit of money for the police department forensic unit. That is what I am asking for, right? Have been asking for it for over 2 years, and I hope we can get there because it could make such a difference and could be just an important part of the enforcement side. Understanding the big side is prevention, but it could be an important part of the enforcement side.
So we have about 3 more minutes before we close out because we do have Councilman Derek Green who's going to present next. But I see that there's another question. I did have a question, but go right ahead. I see you over there. Michelle?
Muriel, hi.
Michelle, I'm sorry.
Really quickly, real quick comment. Larry, really, my husband and I are very happy with your office. We had a break-in while we were asleep in a robbery, and your department's been very professional, so thank you for that. So my comments about the Sunshine Act, journalists and the public rely on the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act to know what public agencies are doing, but the Sunshine Act is often ignored because it's almost never enforced. The worst offenders in Philadelphia might be the school board and the city commissioners. So I have a question for you. Why haven't we seen enforcement of the Sunshine Act from the DA's office? As DA, will you begin to enforce it, and under what conditions? Thank you.
Thank you. So, in general, the vast majority of our cases come from Philadelphia police. Their primary role is investigative, and then they bring us cases. And then we determine whether there are criminal charges that can be used to go after it. And we do that. We do also sometimes get cases from other sources. And sometimes it is individuals who come to us. I am not actually aware of our having been presented with a case that involved potential criminal sanctions under the Sunshine Act. I'm not aware of it having been presented where there was evidence that would support it. To be honest with you, I mean, that's really my best answer. I have not researched it, but I have not seen one come in the door. A lot of cases do come in. I mean, we have about 40,000 cases a year, but I will tell you this, if there is something, you call it the Sunshine Act. I mean, there are a few other similar things, right to know and so on. If there is something where it appears we have probable cause for a commission of a crime under the Sunshine Act or a similar act, such as right to know, we're happy to meet, discuss, look at it. It's never going to come from the Philadelphia Police Department. And I don't say that to be dismissive. It's just not really what they do. But we are more than happy to sit down, look at it. And if we believe it's valid and it's just to proceed, we're more than happy to prosecute it.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm going, for the sake of time, I'm going to withhold my question. Larry, I know that we'll see you within the month over at NEAR with Northeast Against Racism. So for the sake of time, I'm going to reserve my question. And that is going to be a wrap for our district attorney, Larry Krasner. It is always a pleasure to have you here with Philly for Change. We have endorsed Larry Krasner in the past, and we're very grateful that you take the time out of your busy schedule to always come back and talk to us and answer all of our questions. So we thank you very much, and we wish you well on the campaign trail.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Nice to be among friends.
Thank you. Thanks, DA Krasner. So our next speaker, so most of you know that not only am I a member of the steering committee for Philly for Change, but I'm also a member of the steering committee of the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition. And so I'm very excited tonight to have Councilmember Green here, who has introduced a bill in City Council to establish a Philadelphia public bank. And so he's here to talk about that. And so Councilmember Green, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Beth. Pleasure to be in front of Philly for Change in a virtual way. It's a lot different than our normal location in South Philadelphia. And I've been coming to Philly for Change meetings for a long time. Actually, I actually had hair when I first started coming to Philly for Change meetings, which is very interesting how things have transpired. I wish I could take the beard that my wife convinced me to grow to somehow shape-shift it up here. But thank you, Beth, for the work that you've been doing regarding public banking and being part of the Public Banking Coalition. This is an initiative that I started actually the early part of my first term and learned about this issue and this concept. And it really resonated with me because some of you may recall I started my career as a small business lender with the original Meridian Bank at Broad and Glenwood across from Joe Frazier's gym. And the idea of public banking, I think, was so intriguing to me because some of the things I've done in City Council in creating the Philadelphia Business Lending Network and trying to bring lenders together to make it easier for businesses, especially small businesses and businesses of color, to get access to credit, reminded me of my days as a small business lender with Meridian Bank in North Philadelphia. So during that first term, we had hearings to kind of educate people regarding the whole concept of public banking, and learned that, you know, the Bank of North Dakota, which has been around for a very long time and came about during a crisis, and really has provided kind of a banker's bank for a lot of the smaller community-based banks in North Dakota, and a lot of people in that state that have gotten or needed loans, student loans, have gotten them through the Bank of North Dakota, but actually did not know that. And so there's been a long history of public banking in this country. And you know, it's something that has not been around as of recently. And so this movement has really started around the country. A number of cities have started to investigate the concept of public banking. And so after we had our hearing, we were able to work with the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition. And then I was able to identify dollars in our city budget to actually do a study. And so we were able to work with an organization that's based in, as a national organization, has done a lot of the public banking studies around the country. And so we worked with them for a period of time for them to kind of give us some information on trying to help to justify a public bank coming to the city of Philadelphia. We've also worked with some graduate students at University of Pennsylvania, and also Steve Masters, who's a former attorney in City Council, also helped us to put together some information and analysis regarding public banking. So I pulled all that information together, and then we had hearings on the consultant's report regarding public banking, and that gave us some perspective on why we should move forward. And we did that in the, let's say, the fall of 2019, and had hearings on that, and decided, okay, let's move forward with actually putting together some legislation, working with the coalition and others who are part of that work. And I feel somewhat remiss because her services will be on Saturday, but Dr. Emma Chappelle was also part of that work. And I've known Emma Chappelle for a long time from her work, not only in creating United Bank, but also being the first African-American woman to be a vice president of a major bank here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, also one of the early female vice presidents for a major bank in Pennsylvania as well. And so based on the hearings, we then started working on legislation. Also, Neighborhood Networks and the Public Bank Coalition also put together a forum that we also had late in 2019 to talk and continue to educate people about public banking. We then put together a draft, and then the first session of council, when we came back, we did introduce the legislation regarding public banking this year. And so now we are moving forward with the concept. We've been doing a lot of different opportunities to educate people about public banking. In fact, next Tuesday, we'll be having our second public banking live segment to try to continue to educate various people about what's happening in public banking here in Philadelphia. We're hoping to have a summit this spring, bring in some national experts on public banking, and it's starting to really grow. State Representative Chris Rabb, who is my state representative, is introducing legislation to enable public banking in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Congressmember Rashida Tlaib has also introduced legislation in Congress regarding public banking. And also a good friend of mine who is the chair of the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, Shaman Walton, has also introduced legislation in San Francisco in order to have public banking in San Francisco. So this is a moving coalition and of people who are trying to look at, excuse me, how public banking can come to the United States beyond just Bank of North Dakota. I think this will provide an opportunity for Philadelphia to really take some leadership, because if we're able to pass the legislation, it would be the first municipal public bank in the nation. But public banking is something that has been occurring in other parts of the world. In Germany, you have public banks at the local, state, and federal level. I think it really provides an opportunity to use city resources to invest back in our communities. I think it will provide ability to provide access to credit to hard to lend to entities like some of our businesses of color and African-American owned businesses, but also other areas like co-ops. I've been a longtime member of Weaver's Way Co-op, and I was talking with a friend of mine who was a mayor in Burlington, North Carolina, and we both serve on the board of Democratic municipal officials. And they created a co-op restaurant and bar in Burlington, is right next to Elon College, and they actually had to get a person in their community to be the guarantor for that co-op. So the opportunity to provide access to credit and lend to entities like co-ops, provide some other opportunities for public banking, as well as affordable housing developers, as well as other type of new energy concepts like solar energy. So I see a lot of different opportunities for public banking in the initial startup phase, and then gradually over time, I can see even other opportunities for public banking. So I think this gives us some real opportunities to do some things and circulate local dollars that come from our tax dollars into the city and circulate those dollars within our community to help address poverty and help not only businesses grow, but some of these other cooperative economic opportunities to grow as well. So I can talk about public banking all day. I've just started to scratch the surface, but I don't want to give you, take up all your time because I'm sure you probably have other speakers. I'm just not used to being at Philly for Change and not having opportunity to order a beer after my presentation. So with that, I will close.
Thanks, Councilmember Green. Are there questions that people have about the public bank?
I have a question for you, Councilman. Where would people look to see how they can fit in if they're professionals from the banking arena and they might want to volunteer their time?
Excellent point. One of the perspectives that we're doing is that we introduced the legislation and we worked on the logistics of the framework for public banking from a legal perspective, and we have issued an RFP to bring us an outside law firm. So we've really kind of exhausted all of the legal expertise within the law department and the city treasurer's office to help us with some of the very technical legal questions, like we're setting a meeting up with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Can we go to the discount window and borrow money from the Federal Reserve? But in looking and talking to other jurisdictions like San Francisco, they put together a task force. So I've been getting a lot of contacts from friends I've known in the bank community, from smaller banks, community development financial institutions, who've been reaching out and have been had an interest in this whole concept. So I'm trying to put together kind of a task force to talk about and to kind of meet on a regular basis on public banking. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. So if you have contacts or others who are interested in this conversation and in this idea, definitely feel free to reach out to me. So I included my email. So definitely feel free to refer people to me so we can continue the conversation. I have been gathering information from a lot of different perspectives, and that would be helpful. So please feel free to send me an email with their information.
I do have a question, Councilman Green. Considering the fact that we look at the model in North Dakota, and obviously it's a great idea for a city like Philadelphia. However, we have a fair share of challenges that I know, obviously, you're a council person, but with our high poverty levels and with our high illiteracy rates, how do you intend to reach the most vulnerable people in our neighborhoods that are so stricken with poverty, how do you intend to build the bridges to even introduce a concept of public banking when most people, I mean, obviously we have check cashing places. So how do you intend to build a bridge that not only educates people on the necessity of having a public bank, but how do you intend on bringing these people into the fold on how they themselves can benefit from a public bank being affiliated with a public bank?
Well, Melissa, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been trying to do a lot of these type of education opportunities where I've, had conversation WURD with Charles Ellison. We've had the town hall that we did last year, having an upcoming conference and trying to bring different experts here to the city of Philadelphia to talk about public banking and just continue to get the word out. One of the great things that the Public Banking Coalition has been doing is doing various op-eds and trying to educate people, as well as bring more and more organizations into the coalition to get the information out. But also one of the things that I can see as a benefit for a public bank, there are a lot of great institutions in our city that are very small, that are doing great work, but they have limited resources. And that's always been a challenge in the public sector, that as opposed to spend money on marketing, people tend to spend money on delivering the services. So having an entity like a public bank could help educate people about the West Philadelphia Financial Service Institution that Jim Burnett runs in West Philadelphia, or FNATA, or Impact Services, or a number of these great organizations that are doing things in a very local, community-based way. Having a public bank, I think, can help get the word out about some of the activities and services that they're doing, as well as some of the resources that are available at the city level. So I see, even before we get the public bank started, continuing to do the education and advocacy and letting people know about this whole concept. And one of the things that's also been helpful is that at a national level, there's a Pennsylvania Public Bank Institute, as well as a national organization. They put together some very informative types of education materials regarding public banking. They actually have a video that very much reminds me of some of us, and I'm going to date myself a little bit with the concept of Schoolhouse Rock. When we learned just a bill and lolly, 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 get your adverbs here, and all that mother necessity and all those great things that somehow stuck in our head from those great jingle writers from the 70s that became very popular songwriters, but they were very effective because now, I won't say how long, many years or decades later, that stuff is still etched in our minds. So the Public Banking Institute actually put together a video that kind of really describes how a public bank will work. And it's very understandable, and it makes it easier for people to understand. And so I think it's that type of information, getting the word out and using social media and other things. I haven't decided, well, maybe Beth may know if there's going to be any public banking TikTok. I don't know, but
well, maybe we should get one. That's a great idea.
Hey, listen, if people watch my social media, I'll try anything. So water balloons, Special Olympics, polar plunges, you name it, I do it. So I'm almost down from just about anything. So any way to get the word out, I think, is a great idea. And so definitely feel free to send me information regarding public banking.
I think Brian has his hand raised.
Hi, Councilmember Green. Just real quickly, I was wondering if you could, whether you could say a few words about the extent to which there may be an association between public banking and the Community Reinvestment Act. I know Wall Street has been in favor of eviscerating the Community Reinvestment Act pretty much since its inception, which makes me like it more. So I'm wondering if you could say whether there's any relationship there. I'm afraid I just don't know. So I was wondering if you could say anything.
And that is one of the things that, from my banking days, and I still retain some information as I get more seasoned, as my dad would say. Could a institution get CRA credit for investing in a public bank? And that's one of the things we want to investigate because we're trying to find different ways of growing the resources for a public bank. So CRA credit, and I've had some institutions that have had some interest about public banking, pension funds, labor union funds who want to invest in a public bank. So and even the way we drafted the legislation for a public bank, could we accept dollars from other government entities like a SEPTA or other organizations that say with the key card, could we do it through a public bank? And that was another suggestion. So we received a lot of creative ideas that we're going to try to use to investigate and use this as a resource. And so we're going to kick a lot of tires, turn over a lot of cushions to get different perspectives on how we can use this as a real asset and really try to help augment a lot of especially the grassroots community-based organizations and credit unions and others who are doing work but just don't really have the capacity. And if we can help like pull resources together. So if you have and I mentioned West Philadelphia Financial Service Institution or under the leadership of Jim Burnett, a lot of our CDFIs can only lend up to, let's say, $250,000 because they have limited resources. They may be more flexible in lending, but limited resources, where a lot of these larger banks have a lot of resources, but are very restrictive in their lending perspective. Well, if we can help pull resources to allow West Philadelphia or Fanana or other CDFIs to lend even more dollars, that'll help them to bring more income into their organization and help them provide more access to credit for some of their businesses, which at the end of the day, with our high poverty rate, if we can grow more small businesses, especially on our commercial corridors, and we can grow more co-ops like Weaver's Way or Mariposa or and my legislative aide Frank Anuzzi is with New Kensington CDC, and he also does a lot of work with the Kensington Co-op, so I'll give him a quick shout out. But those are the organizations, we can grow those entities within the city of Philadelphia. That will help provide more goods and services, and I think help in some of our poverty issues.
Well, thank you so much, Council Member. We have one more speaker tonight, so I want to give her a little bit of time, but we really appreciate you being here.
No problem. I will virtually go to the bar and act like I'm in the back of the room
There you
and
go.
listen and enjoy and not make a lot of signs and noise. And I'm virtually, you know what? With my notepad, I'm signing my attendance.
Thank you.
That tells you how long I've been around Philly
Then
Change. I'm signing in so I can vote. All right. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Great. Thanks, Council Member. All right. Our final speaker tonight is Tamika Washington. She's a candidate for the Common Pleas Court here in Philadelphia. And she owns her own law firm. And before that, she was a city solicitor. So Tamika, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
So thank you for having me tonight. I know that you've heard from a good amount of people tonight, and thank you for taking the time. Just reminding, as a reminder to me, what Derek was talking about with regard to resources in the community and making sure that people have those resources. One of the things that I do is I teach people how to preserve their homes from fraudulent deed transfer. Unfortunately, that's been a big issue in the city of Philadelphia. Just one example, there were approximately 80 people in 2007 who were indicted for deed fraud. And what I do, as I've worked with Philly VIP as well to provide pro bono services for people who had their homes stolen via deed fraud and was able to restore the title to that home to those clients. Additionally, just to give you some background, I've been practicing for 17 years. I moved here from New York 20 years ago, and I fell in love with this beautiful city. I found a place of worship here. I actually found my husband here as well. And we have 4 wonderful boys. I wanted to just, additionally, I worked as a city solicitor. I helped parents, I helped children find a suitable home when they were accused of abuse or neglect. And then when I started my own law firm, I turned around and helped parents get custody of their children when they were wrongfully accused. So I have had the opportunity to be on different sides of the table. I've had the opportunity to argue rights on behalf of my clients from both the trial level and the appellate level. And I've had some successes in the appellate level as well. I've also had the opportunity to help people who were wrongfully discriminated because of race, sex, disability, and a number of other protective factors by their employers. So I understand the issues that working class people have from, as my pastor likes to say, the pulpit to the door. I understand that as a daughter of a retired registered nurse and a machine operator, I understand the issues that people are facing in this entire city. I've been able to represent people who were at their last hopes, people who did not have hopes, and was able to help them find hope in housing. And just one other thing, unfortunately, one of the reasons that some people may be in dire straits is they've lost their property. And I've been able to help people get back those properties. So just in my work as the founder of the Sharon Baptist Church Legal Ministry, where we've helped hundreds of people get the legal direction that they needed who cannot afford an attorney. And in my work as let's see if we can help, where I've helped people be educated with regard to property rights, estate rights, wills, and so forth. What are those items? How do they protect your legacy? I believe that I would be a great judge on the City of Philadelphia bench, whether they assign me to criminal court, whether they assign me to orphans court, whether they assign me to civil trial court. And I believe that I have the fairness, the compassion, the humility, and the respect that people need when they come before a judge. So if anybody has any questions.
I do think we have time
I'm
for
open
one
to
or
them.
two, if anybody has them.
Yes, Ms. Williams, my name's Cindy Lee, and I'm a Center City resident. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Washington. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Washington. I don't know why I said Williams. I do apologize, Ms. Washington. My question is, if you had your choice, which court would you like to be a judge in, and why?
That's a good question. If I'm assigned to any particular court, I could definitely adjust and definitely learn. I'm guilty of burning the midnight oil, making sure that I do my research and making sure that I have things right. Actually, I love orphans court. Orphans court is a little known court, but I just say land rules. Orphans court handles minors' estates where a minor has been given property, but of course they can't handle the property, so someone has to be assigned to them as a guardian. Orphans court addresses matters where someone may not be able to handle their finances. They're an adult, but they have, for whatever reason, they are mentally incapacitated, or they cannot handle their finances or their personal health. Additionally, orphans court is any person who passed away, their estate, if there's issues between the heirs of the estate, those are the people that would inherit the estate. So the reason I enjoy orphans court is because these are the issues that affect all of our lives, but a lot of people don't understand those issues. And so when you find an attorney that understands those issues, that's a rare find in this city. And of course, that overlaps with what I talked about before, deed fraud. There's a lot of issues with deed fraud that have to do with the state. So I've been able to help people that had deed fraud issues on an estate and then help them settle the estate so that they could have they could be whole again. And they could preserve the legacy for their family. So I would have to say I'm partial to orphans court.
Thank you.
I do have one quick question before we go away. Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you,
Tamika,
Melissa.
Attorney Washington. So you were talking about Orphans Court. If you were assigned to Orphans Court, would you be doing any work around probates? Because I know that the current Register of Wills is trying to get some kind of deferred program so that when people do inherit properties, I know that there's some taxes assessed with the transferring of the deeds and so on and so forth. Are you in agreement with helping to save some family legacies and properties? Because in the past, those costs and fees have not been able to be deferred. And as a result, a lot of people throughout the city of Philadelphia have lost properties, therefore essentially losing family wealth. So are you in support of this deferment program that's currently being proposed in probate court?
So, like as a judge, if I get on the bench, unfortunately, I cannot speak to certain things. I am not a legislator. However, those kinds of programs are the programs that would be in alignment with what I've done as an attorney. Certainly people come to me with those kinds of issues, and they could, it could be $10,000, $30,000 in taxes on a property. So it starts with the Register of Wills. There may be some legislative movement that needs to happen in order for that kind of program to occur. That is something that I'll just say this. I can't promise anything, but show me what you've done. What I've done is help people to get their estates back. That is in line with that kind of initiative. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we are about out of time. So I want to thank all of our speakers tonight. I'm not going to list them because I will invariably forget someone, but I do want to thank all of them tonight and all of you for attending. Melissa or Sam, anything you want to add?
Before we close out, I just want to say that we had 2 other elected officials that were here with us throughout the night. Of course, Commissioner Deeley always is there, but I noticed tonight that we also had State Representative Mary Isaacson that joined in with us, and she stayed with us the whole time. And we also had Judge Sierra Street, who is a candidate for the Commonwealth Court. She joined in with us and she stayed with us the whole time. So we want to say thank you very much to those sitting elected officials. You could have been anywhere else tonight, but you took the time to be here. So we thank you, State Representative Isaacson, and we thank you very much, Judge Street, for joining Philly for Change tonight. And thank you all always for being with us. We really appreciate you, and we value you most importantly as members. And we thank all the speakers, of course. Sam?
We're next up on Wednesday, April 7th. And I believe that endorsement period will be beginning around then. So folks will want to stay tuned, especially if you have a candidate or you are a candidate who is looking for our endorsement, because that will be happening in the month of April. And again, Wednesday, April 7th is a day for our balloting. Folks will be able to advocate for various candidates as well. So that will be good. We look forward to an interesting endorsement process and season. Anything else, folks? Any last announcements?
I do want to say on Sunday, for those of you who know NEAR, I'm one of the co-founders of NEAR, Northeast Against Racism. This Sunday, just check social media, but we're going to be having a community conversation with candidate for state Supreme Court, Maria McLaughlin. We will spend an hour with her. So if you have free time, we're also going to have Commissioner Deeley join us as well. Please come and spend some time with NEAR, Northeast Against Racism, as we have our conversation with the Honorable Judge Maria McLaughlin. So hope that you can join us.
Is that information going to be put in the chat?
That information, yes, I'll put it in the chat right now. Yes, yes, yes. And it's near Northeast Philly Against Racism, easily found on social media, Facebook.
Great. Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you, Melissa and Beth. And again, as we round the corner regarding the endorsement season, we'll be looking at some of the more traditional Philly for Change topics. So, please do share with the three of us ideas for stuff that.
Hey, Sam.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
Hi.
Hey, Mary.
Hey, listen, I want to just say, I want to try and get the opportunity in one of your meetings before the primary. We have some ballot questions that are really important.
Oh, let's cover those in April. If
And
that
I would be happy to come on and talk about them because it's so very important that we defeat the two first questions. And it's the Republicans are counting on a low turnout, and we really need to try and work and make people understand the constitutional amendments that are being posed that are going to change our Constitution if we don't get the vote out to defeat them. So I'm happy to come on and talk about them and explain the background of them. But it's public health, safety, and welfare, which, as an elected official, it is my first duty and honor to take care of. But I wanted to put that out there to all of you that we really need to have, while every person on the ballot is so very important, we have these really important ballot questions that really need to be discussed. People need to be educated on them. We need time to educate people on them, and we need to try and defeat the first two.
Yeah, and it's hard to defeat ballot questions. So yes, if you want to say you can make it on the 7th, you're invited.
Sure, I'm happy to. I really wanted to put that out there. That it's something I'm trying to go out as much as possible. I hope my other elected officials are trying to do the same, because it's really going to take a big voter turnout to defeat the ballot questions that are trying to unjustly change the balance of power in our Constitution.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, we look forward to that. That's a big issue.
And say hi to Dorothy for me.
I will say hi to Dorothy. She says hi to you. She wants
my little girlfriend.
Yes.
My little Corona girlfriend. Yes. So, all right. Well, I'll see you guys on the 7th then, and we'll talk about it.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe at the park before that.
Yeah, I'll see you at the park, but everybody else. All right. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Well, that's something to look forward to in April. And thanks again, and have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Grayson, don't jump on me. Get down on there, you crazy cat. Grayson is on top of the bookshelf.
Oh, geez.
I'm gonna kill him. Just gotta get out of here.
Good luck.
All right.
See you later.
All right.
Thanks, Beth.